difference does that make to, say, applied research or other innovation?
Because I think it sort of follows a bit on the way I try to sort of define a living lab. We know from previous sort of studies in innovation and other approaches that users are really key in actually shaping an innovation. In actually, that's user acceptance is basically what differs an innovation from an invention. You can have great inventions, if they're not being used, we don't call them an innovation. So we know users are really important in an innovation process because they're ultimately going to make use of it, but also because of the feedback they can give back to the producers of an innovation. And for many years and decades, a lot of innovation processes have been sort of keeping users quite far at bay, sort of first developing a technology or a product, and then when it's sort of finished that process, then you sort of bring it to the market and you expose it to users. So what's really different with a living lab is that you very early on include the users into the process. The question is, of course, who is the user? And that is sort of an open-ended question. And if you would use very conservative users in your living lab, that's obviously also probably going to be reflected in the design of the innovation. And so what difference does it make? You tap into very valuable knowledge, experience, but also you early on would create legitimacy by the ultimate end users of an innovation, which could be really key in things like electric vehicles or other sort of disruptive innovations, which really sort of, do offer things differently than what users are sort of used to.
Well, maybe I can add something to that. I think that one of the key elements is, well, if you look at, for example, urban living labs in the transport sectors. In the transport sector, there are often behaviors and transport patterns, transport use that is kind of stereotypically understood that people always use cars. For example, and this type of transport urban living lab, because it's structured the way that Lars described it, can test whether it is this case and how actually behavior can change, for example. But because in the urban living lab you usually are very careful to monitor each process, like you have evaluation, you maybe have surveys or interviews with people continuing in the innovation process, where you can find out things about actual transport behavior in this kind of innovation. But because it's so small scale, you can do that. And what I'm thinking about is, of course, a case that I know a bit more about, the UBGO in Gothenburg, where they tried an app, so to speak, and they wanted people to get out of their cars and go into public transportation,
car sharing,
bike use, and so forth. And they carefully monitored behavioral change. But that's, of course, only possible if you make a small case experiment like an urban living lab. And I also have experience which was from the Stockholm congestion charging trial. Similar thing. You are able to learn about behavioral change in a way that you otherwise probably couldn't do.
It's deep interactive learning rather than just surveying, sending the users a survey and say were you satisfied with the functionality of this product. It's really about engaging with those users in an interactive learning process about what are your expectations about this product. Why do your mobility patterns look the way they look? So it's really that sort of deeper kind of learning that you're trying to get at with living labs, I think.
Maybe I can add some more aspect that you can learn. It's of course also about the obstacles. I mean, what are going to be the problems with this solution? You can also, in a sense, discern that from the experiment. Because if you intend to upscale the experiment to something more real or a part of a policy or something, there are of course obstacles out there to change. We know that. So you can learn about what might be the institutional problems or legal problems with these things, because they kind of come out in that context. So there's much learning that you can do, but of course it's important then to kind of monitor that and do something with it.
And you might learn things that you won't be very happy with and which you find difficult to communicate to the organizations that are funding your living lab. So I mean, I think there is really this challenge and tension with living labs, that we know we learn a lot from our mistakes and we learn a lot from failure. And I think living labs should be open to that perspective, that you learn a lot from failure. But there could be a tension there that it's a project, it's supposed to live up to its objectives, it's supposed to deliver, it's supposed to be a success story. But that I think there is still a lot of work ahead to create greater legitimacy about that we actually learn from the mistakes that we make in living labs, and not just from the things that we do well.